school, all the extra work that it takes to apply, studying seemingly 24/7 for years on end, taking USMLE Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, whatever your residency boards are, subspecialty boards. And I have a friend who is 7 board certified. So it's truly a journey. And it's a question you should be asking yourself. If you're watching this before you are applying to med school, you should be asking it to yourself. And if you're in med school already watching this, you may be asking yourself, you may have already asked yourself this multiple times along the way, what was I thinking? Why am I doing this? And I don't, I say that facetiously, but semi-seriously, it is important to consider because it is a very, very big commitment. It's one of the few career paths that is so many years of an investment once you sign up for it. Even law school, a lot of other graduate programs, the schooling may be long, but the added component of a residency, which majority of people do end up going into, people train for 3 to upwards of 7 to even 10 years after med school, and it really is one of those lifelong commitments to learning, which is a very wonderful thing, an admirable thing, and a self-gratifying and fulfilling thing. But it is something that I think all too often people don't realize going into it that they're necessarily getting into. So it's very important that you do ask yourself why, and that's what this first video is all about. It's what do you want and why do you want it? And, obviously you are watching this because you're either thinking of applying to med school and you think you want to become a doctor, or you're in med school and you've decided that you want to become a doctor. But the reality of it is there's so many shades of gray. There's such a wide spectrum of that concept of I want to be a doctor, or I want to get an MD, or I want to go to med school. There's so many different paths that sometimes people don't realize until they're in it, or until they're very deep into it, or very far along the way, or after the fact in retrospect, looking back. So one thing I'd like to plant the seed of is that you really try to get a more specific, definitive answer of what you want, more so than just, I want to be a doctor, or I want to get an MD. There are maybe a type of doctor that you think you want to be. They say a majority of people change what specialty they want once they get in med school. They say you actually shouldn't go into it with a clear-cut, idea of what you want, or rather have an open mind, and as you go through third-year clerkships and try to see what strikes a chord with you, the different lifestyles, the different practical skills that are needed. But it's good to have a vision along the way, as long as you know that vision may change as you find out more, as you learn more. And then the second question is, why do you want it? If you're in med school, that question of what may evolve into, I want to be a surgeon, or I want to be an internist, or I want to work in primary care with people. I want to work in a lab doing pathology. I want to do research. I want to go work for industry. The very first thing is to think about, and whether you're already in med school or you're thinking of applying, whatever stage you're at watching this, are you able to answer that question clearly and definitively and instantly? What do you want out of this? And if you don't have an answer to that question, then it just means that you need to take some time to think about it. I don't suggest that you have an instant answer if it's the first time you've thought about that question. I actually suggest that you really take time to think about it. It has to be a compelling enough end goal, reason for doing it, to keep you inspired and motivated through the hard times. You want to take a long time to think about this, even days or weeks if needed. If an idea becomes clear, step 2 is going to be to write it down, and then you're going to want to remind yourself of that periodically. And then lastly, we'll talk in a subsequent video about challenging your why. So again, you want to have a clearly defined what and why. You want to have a strong enough reason. So my background, the reason I'm creating these videos is to help people who might have been in a situation like me, where I didn't really know why I was doing it. I didn't really have a strong reason that it was all for. I left med school, by the end of my first year, probably about halfway through my first year, I was like, what is the point of this? I stuck it through my first year, stuck it through subsequent years, and towards the end of my third year, finally had the courage to just leave. And I say the courage because at that time, it was a hard decision to make. I left ultimately, and I was disgruntled and frustrated initially because I didn't have a strong enough reason to be there. I questioned, and you'll still question even if your reason is strong, but that strong reason really gives you a base, gives you something to refer back to, and kind of to answer that question. So I suggest you think about this in a combination of ways. One is by putting yourself in the circumstance. If you're not yet in med school and you are considering applying, or you're building up, volunteer work or working as a medical scribe or something to build your resume, that's the perfect time to really ask yourself, what about this attracts me to it? What is it? And the reason that we want to do it is different for everybody. What we're looking for out of it and why that is important to us is different for everybody. And there's no right answer, whether that's to help people, to care for people, to, I had a friend who was an artist who wants to become a surgeon because that's a way to use her artistic talent in a way that she feels like she can give back to humanity in a different way than her artwork used to. There are people who are in it for just money. A lot of people say this is not the right field. If you want to make money, there's a lot of other places to make money. There's a lot of easier ways to make money in the world, which is true, but that's okay too. It's a stable, steady income. Some people want for prestige. There's no correct answer, and you have to ultimately find an answer that's true to you, but not true to what others want of you, or how it will make you look in the public eye, or how others will view you, or it has to be an intrinsically, internally driven purpose, one that's strong enough, a high enough purpose for yourself that's going to keep you going, that's going to get you through the hardest times. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. Me personally, I didn't have any reason. My original reason was I just wanted to learn about the human body, and I wanted to master it, and I just wanted that sense of mastery. So I guess I did have a reason, but it wasn't necessarily treating people. And when I found that my grades were excellent at the beginning of school, it was very reaffirming to those goals. But as soon as I got a little distracted, started balancing my life, going out with friends more, things like that, my grades dropped, and then I felt like I was falling short of that mastery. And if I couldn't be kind of the subject matter expert, I didn't really know what else I was there for. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a doctor and be a clinical physician or work with people in that way. Now I came back to med school completely different. After a long circuitous route, I am here for primary care. I'm here for that actual intention of being one-on-one with people and helping people in that way. But in the past, when I was previously there, I might have looked at fields like psychiatry or pathology, things that were less interacting with people. And now I have my heart set on primary care medicine and global health and different elements that are there for a different reason. So if you're watching this before you apply to med school, that's a great thing. You have time to figure that out, to ask yourself those questions. Take months, takes weeks, years even. It's a slow process getting into med school, as we all know. If you're in med school and you're like, well, now I'm here, what's the point of this? It doesn't mean it's not the right place for you or that there is no reason. It means that you need to take more time to think about it. You need to think harder about it or more creatively about it. And I think when you do that, you will find that there are things in it you appreciate. And maybe there are things that you thought you wanted out of it. Maybe it's getting back to the root of why'd you even apply in the first place. Maybe there are things you thought you would be getting out of it that you're not getting now. But with some thought, you may be able to realize that you still may be able to get some of those things. Maybe they are true, or maybe there are some different things, or maybe it's completely different. The point is, there's so many spectrum of answers to this. I welcome your responses. You can email me at the link below, the email address below. But an important thing is to detach yourself from the circumstance in order to be able to find that answer. You might have to go on a hike or on a long drive, or when you're away for vacation, or when you're with your family, or when you're taking a trip somewhere, or when you're going out for a run, you're spending some time in nature. You need to take those times away sometimes to get perspective on the other times, on your day-to-day. So I recommend, if you're not in the habit of taking breaks, I recommend you take a break, step out of the circumstance, and take some time to think about it. Don't just keep pushing through, grinding through. If you're not in med school yet, spend a lot of time in hospital environments, clinical environments. Talk to people, ask them why they went into it. What are they happy about? What was different than what they expected? Having that certainty, if you're applying to med school, comes through in interviews. And even when you're in med school, it'll come through in residency interviews. That authenticity, that true passion, that purpose, that desire for why you're doing it is going to be the difference in you putting in those extra hours when you're an overworked resident coming off a 36-hour shift than the next guy. And residency, program directors see that. They see the difference in the person. Sometimes they can't, so people are better at, more convincing during an interview, but if you really have that, it won't be a forced sale. It'll just naturally come through, that authenticity. When you're in med school, it's about keeping those energy levels, the motivation, that drive up, because you want it at a high enough level and consistent enough day to day to enable you to accomplish things you want to accomplish, to get the grades you want to get, to perform the way you want to perform, to become the doctor you want to become. And unfortunately, the reality of life is the process is not as glamorous often as the end result that we seek from the process. And a big part of this program, the reason I created these videos, is that if we can redefine things the way we see them in our minds and sort of acknowledge and accept what it's going to take to get what we want, and if we do in fact want it badly enough, there is the possibility of starting to enjoy the process. And that's something that I think eluded me for a long time, but you always hear about, it's the process, not the product. It's the journey, not the destination. But it really is true, and it really is possible, but it comes more naturally to some than others because we've been thinking this way for a longer time. And for me, it didn't come naturally. For me, my mind was wired a completely different way for so many years of my life that it was, it's been taking me about the last decade to kind of gradually reprogram, retrain my mind to think in a different way. That concept of neuroplasticity, which we'll talk about often, which I'll drop that word often, but it's very true. We have hardwired pathways that we've adapted to just going to on a regular basis, on an almost automatic basis, but we have to look at those and think, are those pathways serving us? And if not, there are ways to start thinking in more constructive, productive pathways that reinforce the beliefs and the thought processes and the way of looking at the world that we sincerely want. So that's about it for this first video, but I think it's important to figure out why, because there are going to be times that you're stressed out or overwhelmed during the process, even the process of applying, and a lot of times that's going to make the difference getting through those times in a more graceful, positive manner than it kind of taking something out of you that you initially had. And once you have a why, it doesn't have to be the end all. That's one of the concepts of purpose, is it doesn't have to be written and set in stone that you can never change it, but your purpose will evolve. My uncle, he's a Jesuit priest, studied and long counseling history, and I remember being at a standstill because I had all these different options in life and I didn't want to go through any of them. And he said as long as you stand looking at the 10 doors, they'll all stay open, but if you go through the one door, yes, the other 9 may close behind you, but 10 new doors will open ahead of you. So the point is identifying this why, identifying this purpose, acknowledging that it is a work in progress, that it's something that you will continue to develop and will evolve, but you want it at least identified initially, because when the going gets tough, it's there. It's not perfect, but it's there, and it's there for you to call back on and maybe to refine if that time comes later where you challenge it. And one of the things we are going to talk about is intentionally challenging it. And once you've identified this why, you want to remind yourself of your why and remind yourself of similar principles regularly. And we'll talk about watching inspirational, motivational content, looking at principles embodied by others who share a similar goal. We're going to talk about having a singular focus, a singular goal. And then lastly, you're going to want to challenge this why, but challenge your why on regular intervals. We'll talk about that in a subsequent video, because a lot for the first video. This is a 3-part series. I hope you'll tune back in and continue watching. And there's lots more content ahead, so thank you very much.